Brooke, how are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Awesome. Good to be here once again in our monthly OCD and SUD discussion where we talk about all things OCD and if people have particular questions about substance use disorders or SUDs, as we will refer to them as well too, more than happy to chat about those as well. Stacey is a therapist in the VA system. How's that going for you these days there, my friend?
Fabulous. They print my name correctly on the paycheck every 2 weeks.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. And it's always fun to say, and you're very open about this, that you come to us with lived experience in both SUD and OCD as well too.
Yes, I did. So I
So
have both sides. Yeah.
yeah, and you're a therapist who treats both actually. So you
Yes.
are you are a unicorn in so many ways.
Yeah, you had an legally blind albinism. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
actually on the rare disease registry. So
are you really?
there you go. Yes. Albinism is on the rare disease registry. That's my claim to fame. I'm owning it.
Okay. Well, congratulations. I don't know if you want to be congratulated for that, but
Well, you take what the cards you're dealt, and you play the hand.
yeah.
So
Well, shall we get to some questions? As always, I usually go down the line. Stacey can jump up, and get down. Jump. No, sorry.
uh,
Yeah.
yes, you brought me back to the Robin Williams movie, Mrs. Doubtfire. Thank you very much.
One of the funniest lines ever was in that movie when Mrs. Doubtfire threw the fruit at Pierce Brosnan and said it must have been a drive-by fruiting. I thought that was one of the cleverest lines I'd ever heard in my life. Drive-by fruiting.
Yeah. Well, and as you look at the questions, I'll just throw out there that we do have a website. It's www.ocdsud.com. We do try to put some information there. Presentations that Patrick and I have done in the past are there. There's some short videos and some resources. We also have a section of books. There's no book specifically about OCD and SUD, but we have some basic material on both disorders that people can read up on. So if you come to us through the SUD community, there's books on OCD. And if you come to us through the OCD community, there's books on SUD. I had to think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, you got it right. Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll get started here at the beginning. For sexual orientation OCD, by the way, sometimes people write HOCD, but that's a misnomer. And because it's not just a fear of being homosexual, it is a fear of being straight. It is a fear of being trans. It is a fear of being, bi. It is a fear of a different identity than you are. So we always correct that right off the bat, just to say that the term now we use is sexual orientation OCD. Would you want to add anything to that, Stacey?
No, the thing that went through my head is I think I have a fear of being you.
Yeah, well, yeah. You and me both. I'm also afraid of being me. So, yeah. Talk about that exposure every day. But for sexual orientation, what are some less R-rated exposures one can do? As a father with children, I don't want to potentially bring inappropriate content into the home. I'm a married practicing Catholic, so preferably the exposures are chaste and not things that would violate your faith. Thank you in advance in case there's any confusion. Yeah, okay, we got that. So, well, exposures don't have to. First of all, exposure should never violate anyone's faith. Let's just put that out there. That would never be anything that we would want to do. Now, it may sound weird to make that statement and then to say, why don't you let a thought or image or urge be there without doing something to neutralize it? But we're not asking you to, blaspheme something. But if your OCD is blasphemous thoughts or images or urges, and those are in your head already, we're just asking you not to do a compulsion in response to those things. Because I don't believe the and you say you're Catholic, so I'm going to go with the Bible. I don't believe the Bible says compulsions are necessary as a way to get into heaven, right? Compulsions are not designed to keep you in your faith. Compulsions are designed to neutralize obsessions, right? So the obsessions have nothing to do with a faith problem. The obsessions are an OCD issue. Now we know this, OCD attacks things that you love. Therefore, if you find your marriage or your faith to be an important thing in your life, it's ripe for the picking for OCD to grab onto. And Stacey, maybe you want to talk a little bit about some lived experience in that, about how OCD probably has not bothered you much about things you don't give a crap about.
Oh, no, not at all. If I don't care about them, OCD is like, oh, that's boring. You care about something, it's like Pac-Man on speed.
Yeah. Chomp,
You
chomp,
know?
chomp, 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 chomp,
Yeah.
chomp. Yeah.
Sorry to make a drug reference during an OCD SUD. That's
Yeah,
right.
really. Yeah, by the way. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it goes after what's important to you.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, many people will confuse this as, I have a problem with faith. I'm not praying enough. I don't have a close enough relationship with my higher power or something of that nature. And that is not how we approach the treatment of this. We approach the treatment of this in OCD has convinced you of these things, right? And therefore you're doing compulsions believing that somehow they are going to help you in your faith, that they are going to keep your relationship with the higher power. They're going to prevent you from going to hell or some bad place or something of that nature. And again, nothing could be further from the truth, right? Because compulsions are doing one thing and one thing only. They're designed to neutralize an obsession, and they are also the food of OCD, which therefore keeps OCD alive and kicking. So
Yes.
if
Now, there are people who have various faiths that do require some repetitive behavior. And I was
Mhm,
raised Catholic, so I'm very familiar with the rosary.
mhm,
But that is within the tenets of your faith. So as long as you're staying within the tenets of your faith and not overdoing it, doing the rosary once or twice per, whatever's, required, and then being able to stop, then that is just practicing your faith. And the other thing too was SUD is we say the same thing. Your faith can be part of the recovery process, and it should be, but you also need a place where you can be fully honest about the struggles if you're having cravings for drugs, alcohol, cocaine. And sometimes church is not the place people feel the most comfortable being honest with their struggles. So having both a therapist for OCD, SUD, and your community of faith as part of the recovery process is going to be more well-rounded and move you forward in your recovery process.
awesome. Yep. Now, the exposures that we might have someone do in a situation like this is, well, I'd want to know what kind of things potentially you're avoiding. Like, would you avoid eye contact with, and from how you've described it, would you avoid eye contact with men because you fear, well, what if we make eye contact and I find myself attracted to them? And I would then say, firm handshakes with people, direct eye contact with them while you're talking to them, and allow yourself to experience that and learn. Just because there may be an intrusive thought or image or urge that pops into your head while doing that doesn't change who you are, right? You may have doubts about it because OCD is the doubting disorder, and so it's going to instill doubt about certain things, but doubts don't have to change anything, right? I could doubt that my ceiling is going to remain where it is for the rest of this webinar, but it doesn't make it fall, right?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for it to fall.
We've tried for, forever, how long we've known each other, like 8
Yeah.
billion years at this point. We have wished for each other to have horrible things happen to each other, and none of them have come true yet.
No. I guess I'm just not that powerful.
I've tried. We've both tried, and
Yeah.
we're failing miserably at the whole experience. So that might just be one example, though, of a way that you would do some ERP in this kind of situation and get yourself to be able to recognize that, hey, guess what? I can handle any thought, any image, any urge that I may have without having to do a compulsion. Let's go to the next one. Boy, we get several 4-part questions here.
Yeah.
Ta says, met a girl 2,000 miles away, connected well, had great chemistry. On the 3rd day, we're feeling uncertain whether or not this would last long. Told her we should stop talking. Had more cons than pros of keeping in contact with her since I get attached really easily. I cannot stop ruminating of what if she was the one for me. I feel heavily guilty. I blame myself. Or what if things turned out differently? If I didn't say that, I cannot stop hyperfixating on her every minute of the day. I went back and told her I changed my mind, but she didn't feel the same way. I feel super regretful and guilty. I don't know, first of all, that that's an OCD thing or not, right? I don't want to just jump into that you did that because of an obsession or compulsion. So let me just make that statement. Would you agree, Stacey, or would you throw something else in?
I would agree, but I heard a very specific word in there that always makes me go,
Which one is that? Would you want to?
What if?
Yeah, there you go. And I would agree on that. So there are a lot of what ifs going on. And boy, we know that OCD loves a what if for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it could grab onto that. Now, all that being said, the beauty is the work that Stacey and I do would still apply to a situation like this, where we know that things are going to pop into your head, and they are going to be based on guilt or shame or disgust or anxiety, maybe anger, other feelings that we may not like. Regret could come into a picture like this as well. And in these types of situations, especially if much of your, and if this is an OCD kind of thing, and much of your life has been based on, well, if I'm not 100% sure, then I'm going to run away from the experience, which means you've probably run away from most things in your life because you weren't going to get a 100% guarantee on it. Then, while we may not be able to fix this one, what we would want to do, and tell me what you think, Stacey, I'd want to work on how are you going to approach future decisions? How are you going to approach future relationships as well, too? I would want you to really focus on that, because people who live in the past aren't really living their lives, right? They're living their what if life, but they're not really living their life.
Oh, and living that what if life is very time consuming, and it's exhausting, and it's not fulfilling because there's never an answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we can always look, I always say this to people, no decision is ever a good or a bad decision until after it has been made and we see the results of the decision.
Yeah. Armchair quarterbacking.
Yeah, right. Totally. Right. So we make a decision at the time that we make it, and the decision that we make appears to be the best decision to make at the time that we make it. Milliseconds after making it, we may realize not the best decision. In fact, one of the most fascinating experiences I ever saw of this was, in San Francisco, they've got the Golden Gate Bridge, and they have fences up now because people would jump off of the bridge if they were thinking of ending their life, unfortunately, and we wouldn't want anybody to do anything like that. But they interviewed a person who did jump and who actually survived, which is a rare thing because it's really high up. And even though you're hitting water, by the time the speed you're going and everything, that water is like a rock. And so this person talked about the fact that when they finally let go, that moment, they felt it was the best decision to make. And a split second later, when they were not holding on to the railing anymore, they thought to themselves, what have I just done? And regretted that decision instantly. Now, fortunately, this person is alive and survived and now goes out and speaks to people about that experience and what it was like, and hopefully motivating people to reach out for help and not take such drastic measures. But Ta, the decision you made when you made it felt to be the best decision to make. The aftermath of the decision now does not feel as if it was the best thing to make. That person has decided that they're not interested anymore. And there's two things to do. Do we move forward and learn from this experience? Maybe work with somebody who helps us to make decisions in a better way going forward, or to look at various ways of doing a decision, or allowing us to have more information before we make a decision, whatever it might be. Or again, do we spend all of our time regretting this, thinking, that was a dumb thing. I shouldn't have done that. Because beating yourself up over something from the past is not going to make you better in the future. So, I hope you'll reach out to somebody to let them help you make better, or maybe not even better decisions, but just make a decision that you will feel was more informed or better for you in the future. But also, please don't anybody be under the auspices that everybody without OCD makes decisions and doesn't have regrets, because that is not true. Right?
Yeah. There are plenty of people out there without OCD who regret decisions.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of decisions I've made that I've regretted that have absolutely nothing to do with OCD.
Well, I think that, Stacey, that's an interesting discussion from the substance abuse point of view. How many people have used substances and regretted the use of the substance? And OCD was not involved in that at all. And even when they get sober, they regret numerous things, like the money they stole from family or friends when they were visiting their homes to support their habit, the behaviors that they might have engaged in as a way to get drugs or alcohol, and all of those types of things as well too.
Yeah. Well, and in the 12-step programs, they have the promises, and part of that is that we will not regret the past. Not that we don't acknowledge it, because and part of that process is also making amends where it's safe to do so, because there's times where it's not safe to do so, and you'd want to work with a therapist or a sponsor on figuring that out. But there is some regret of the past when it comes to substances, because it's an illness of lying and cheating and stealing. When somebody says, are you high? The answer is, no, I'm not high. Are you accusing me? I've been not high for like a month. And don't you give me any credit for what I'm doing? Attack. When all the time, you're high as a kite. So the statistics say that for every person who's actively using substances in a SUD with a disordered type of way, they're impacting 7 other people: family, friends, coworkers, people who care about them. 7 people are involved. And so there can be a lot of regret around that. And the ironic thing is the stress of that regret when you have OCD can then trigger intrusive thoughts and ruminations and compulsions and other things to try to deal with that regret. And it becomes a very circular hamster wheel type situation. So dealing with one helps you deal with the other. One, you can do more cognitive behavioral therapy around, cognitions and thinking and step work, or smart recovery, or is really cognitive work. And then with the OCD, you're doing the behavioral work through the exposure and finding a balance between the two to move you forward. Because if you truly struggle with both, you have to address both. You might focus more on the OCD for a little while and more on the SUD, but if you don't deal with them both, one of them will come up and slap you upside the head. and derail your recovery.
Well said. Well said. Kitty Kate says, even if we like or enjoy intrusive thoughts, they don't have to mean anything, as in sexual orientation. Right. Also, am I in denial if I'm choosing my orientation in sexual orientation OCD, or are we allowed to choose what we want to be? I don't see why anybody couldn't choose what they want to be. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I want to go back to the first part, and maybe, Stacey, your lived experience really comes into play here. Would you say that a thought would be intrusive if you enjoy it?
No.
There we go. I didn't think so either. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's intrusive when it is interrupting, disturbing, distressing, disorganizing, dismantling. I got a lot of words. Enjoyment doesn't come on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Because intrusive thoughts are thoughts that you don't want. You find them distressing and disturbing and hard to express with others. One of my favorite books, it's a little old now, but is called Imp of the Mind. And it was one of the
I
first
love
things.
Lee Bear's book.
Oh,
Into
yeah.
the Mind. Yeah, it's
It
great.
was one of the first things I read, and I went, wow, people think this way? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
Eureka. But I've also given it to a lot of people, and they've come back and said to me, and these are sometimes friends or coworkers that I'm not treating as a therapist. I just give them the book when they bring up that they have OCD, and I'm like, here, read this. And they come back and they say, I never would have admitted this to you had you not given me this book. And it's that other people have these type of distressing thoughts. So intrusive thoughts are thoughts you don't want to have. They're difficult to admit that you're having. They can be embarrassing to talk about. Those are intrusive thoughts. Something you like is a thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alexander says, I recently heard a story of someone 2 degrees away from me being schizophrenic and believing that their dad is an alien here to hurt them. This scared me into thinking, could I believe this? We could all believe that.
Well, we could. Given the right circumstances, you can believe just about anything. However, if somebody truly has that particular mental illness, what their perception is not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And it, just like with OCD, the perception about the intrusive thought you're having is not accurate. If it's, identity. I'm trying to stay away from, HOCD, but identity, OCD, whatever it is that you find distressing, is, problematic for you. If somebody who has schizophrenia has thoughts, images, and sounds that they find distressing, it's just a different type of mental illness that's best if they work with a therapist and a psychiatrist to address it. So we can all think anything. I mean, some joking here, but if there's an alien on the planet, it's Patrick. If I had to bet, MIB being real, Patrick, definitely. Mm-hmm. Not sure what planet he's from, but
I can't tell you. I'd have to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah. But you could think that, and you could even have intrusive thoughts about that, because now that you're worried about it, if you have OCD will be like, oh, you might think these thoughts, or you might start to think this way. Does that mean you have, it will go after what's important to you.
Yeah. I think the other piece too, that's really important here is maybe even going a little deeper. Of course, we see people with OCD have a fear of, what if I were to develop a psychotic disorder in some way? Mm-hmm. And so what do? They do a lot of different checking, reality testing, checking their beliefs, checking their behaviors, asking other people if they think that they've done some things or whatever. And all out of the fear of what if I were to develop this other thing, right? What if I have this? What if I have it and I don't know that I have it? Anything of that nature.
Right. And as someone who has worked with hundreds of people who do have psychotic disorders, they don't do those things.
Right.
They don't believe that there's anything wrong with the way they're thinking. So if
Mhm.
you're checking and thinking and making sure that you don't have it, then there's your first hint that you don't have it.
Mhm.
Not to provide reassurance, but the reality is that people who have schizophrenia generally don't have any insight and they're not searching for answers.
Right. Or if they are, they're answers that are unattainable, as in, if you could just get the demon out of me, then things would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Something like
But I also want to point out, because I think it's important, that when people with a psychotic disorder get on the right medications and get the right supports, they can live productive lives and hold jobs and get degrees. And, but just like with OCD and SUD, treatment is necessary and extremely beneficial. It's just that each disorder gets treated a little differently.
that. Mhm. Yeah. TM says, I'm no longer in therapy. Is there things I can do to manage intrusive thoughts when they're feeling more and more? Well, number one, get back into therapy would be one of my first suggestions. If you were working with someone who was really helping you with this and got you to a point where they weren't really bothering you, there's nothing wrong with a couple of booster sessions here and there, just to kind of get yourself back in to make sure that things are going well and you maintain the gains that you have. Number two, I would recommend, if there were things that you did in therapy that you're not doing anymore, go back to doing those things because they worked, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been in recovery for many, many years, but last summer I had something come up that kind of, knocked me off my feet for a bit and got stuck in my head and was causing some issues. And because I'm so open about all of my issues to all of my friends, they know I don't drink, they know I have intrusive thoughts, they know I have OCD, they know I have food contamination stuff. And it was just suggested to me that, well, why aren't you doing some ERP around that issue? And I thought, that's a really good point. Why am I not doing some ERP around this issue?
Yeah. Yeah.
So things do come up, and this one just blindsided me. And so I did do that. I made a plan, and then I told a friend of mine about it to hold me somewhat accountable. So, although big fan of therapy, sometimes if you can develop some supports that around you that really understand your OCD, if something comes up and you're willing to do the work that that will help, then you can make a plan with somebody, your significant other, friends, family, and go through a course of ERP to see if you can, knock that down as well. Or you, as Patrick said, there's nothing wrong with some booster sessions. But I think there's two ways to set that up for long-term recovery. Booster sessions are great. And if it gets to a point where it's derailing your life again, then booster sessions or returning to therapy for a short period of time to get back on track is a great idea. But if you're like me and you're open with people and you have your support network and something comes up, you also have the option just to work within your support network, use the skills you are already taught, and address that situation that's kind of, getting you stuck. It didn't derail my life, but I was perseverating. And it was pointed out to me that I was perseverating and stuck. And I was like, oh, good point.
Isn't it interesting, that you've been through all that therapy, you are a therapist, and even you could be like, oh, wait a minute, I should be using some skills.
Yeah.
Right. And I say that as an example for everybody to
Yep.
say that, sometimes when you're in it, you don't realize you're in it, and you don't realize the solution might be there in front of you. And it might be the very advice you would give to everybody else you love. You just forget to apply it to yourself.
Yes. And I think it talks to the fact that, recovery is a journey. It's a lifelong journey. And sometimes, you might trip. The goal is just not to go back to, falling down. and not be judgmental about tripping. Just you utilize the skills and the supports that you developed that got you into recovery, and go back and use those again.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people don't want to talk about when they get stuck, something comes back up, or OCD changes a theme. I worked with an individual who waited 6 months to come back into therapy. They had worked on a lot of their OCD as a young adult in their late teens and early 20s, and then they got pregnant, and they wound up with postpartum OCD, which they had obviously never had before. This was their first child,
Yeah.
but it came back with such a force that they felt, ashamed that they weren't able to deal with it on their own. But they also had the stress of having a new child and all of these things, and they were going to go back to work soon. And I was like, I'm just glad you got in here, and was able to get back on track, learn some new things, and also learn that sometimes things come up. And if you know how to address it and you have the supports to address it, don't wait. There's no reason to wait. And that's true of substance use disorder. Sometimes people carry shame and guilt around if they've relapsed. The sooner you can get back into your support network, therapy, treatment, detox, smart recovery, 12-step meetings. I don't care what your what is, as long as you're connected and it's a place you can be honest, I'm all for it. But that self-judgment doesn't get you anywhere but stuck for longer than you want to be. And I think that's an aspect we don't talk about a lot, even in treatment. We talk about the progress that people have made, but we don't say it's okay if you relapse, if you need to come back, if you need booster sessions, if you need a whole nother treatment. I went to treatment for SUD 7 times, and I had no idea that the 7th time was the one that was going to take.
Yeah. You didn't give up.
No.
Until you finally gave up of the things you needed to give up, right?
Yeah, only to find OCD waiting on the other side going, okay, now that you haven't given up and you've got some sobriety, let's deal with your OCD and your PTSD. So that was a lot of fun.
Geez, you wonder if the SUD played a role in some of the we came around. I don't.
Don't go all crazy on me, Patrick.
That would be no.
Yeah.
No. Sebastian asked, "Could I email you?" Yeah, you can email. Stacey, you want to give the SUD OCD email out for if people want to get hold of us too?
Yeah. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I have a cold. I took cough syrup before this, but it works as well as it works, which is not well. The email is SCONROY. So it's my first initial S and CONROY 1994 at gmail.com.
And if you need to get hold of me, you can go to care@nocdhelp.com as well.
Yeah. And that email is also on the website at www.ocdsud.com. So there's a contact us form that comes directly to that email.
Awesome. And just a reminder, as we turn the halfway point here, tonight's webinar brought to you by NoCD. NoCD is an online platform for the treatment of OCD and related disorders. Check us out at nocd.com or treatmyocd.com. And we do online teletherapy for people with obsessive compulsive and related disorders. And we are happy to sponsor this monthly OCD and SUD webinar as part of the OCD SUD special interest group through the International OCD Foundation, of which Stacey and I play a role.
Yes, just a little one. Occasionally we run around.
Now and then, whatever.
But speaking of which, the IOCDF International OCD Foundation Conference is going to be in Orlando, Florida this year.
In July, the hottest month of Florida's existence, I believe.
Yeah, Patrick, but there's this thing they've invented. It's called air conditioning.
Oh, do you have to stay inside for that, or can you go outside for that? Or
no, you stay inside for it, just like when you stay inside when it's 12 degrees up north.
Oh, is that how it works? Okay, it's the opposite, but the same. All
Yeah,
right, I like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And although we have humidity, I have never had to shovel it and I've never slipped on it. So you can
That's true.
have it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Humidity, I don't mind. It's good for the breathing. Us
Yeah.
Midwesterners love some humidity. I have to say,
Yes.
we like a little.
But the conference will be in Orlando. There's a couple of opportunities to volunteer and such. If you need some assistance to reach out to the IOCDF. They've done different things in different years, but there'll be some information there. I'll be there. Patrick will be there. We'll have some information on OCD, SUD. And it's just an incredible experience. I've never gone to a conference quite like it. And if I only could go to one professional conference a year, that would be the conference I would choose. It's just a very unique place. It's for people who have OCD, people who treat OCD, and people who research OCD. And we all hang out in the same place and have a ton of fun, both teaching and harassing each other.
And one other for people who support those with OCD
Yes.
as well too, because there's families that get involved also.
Bring your families and friends. It will give them a better understanding of what OCD is. There's family tracks. I mean, I just really haven't. I've never had somebody come to the conference and go, "I didn't like it."
Yeah. Any particular questions you looked or you were looking around there at all?
No, you beat me to it because I was looking at all the ones with intrusive thoughts, since that's one of my favorite topics.
Someone asked about ego dystonic versus ego syntonic. Basically, what that means is, we would define OCD as ego dystonic thoughts, meaning thoughts that go against our values, our person, the way that we think about the world, versus ego syntonic would be thoughts that you're like, yep, that matches, that goes along with me, and that's what I like. I haven't met people who love their OCD thoughts. I don't know if you ever did, Stacey, and thought they were awesome or anything like that, but I'm going to assume they were pretty ego dystonic.
Yeah. And the way I remember those two is dis.
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 Yes.
It's ego
Dis needs to go away.
Needs to go away, talk to the hand. But yeah, that goes back to the early conversation we had about the fact that if it's a comforting thought, it's not intrusive and it's not OCD. As you like to point out, if OCD was helpful, we would tell people, oh, you should try a little OCD, which I can't ever see you doing.
But people do that all the time. I mean, we see that, I saw that on a newscast during COVID. I saw someone say, if we all just had a little OCD, wouldn't that be great? It would help us get through COVID. I wanted to throw my shoe through the television.
Those people don't know and understand what OCD is.
Yeah. It's just, it hurts the entire community is what it does.
It does. And I work with mental health professionals who will be in a big Teams channel, and they'll type in, or they'll say, oh, well, my OCD didn't allow me not to be organized for this meeting. And I back channel them and I'm like, really? You're using a DSM diagnosis as an adjective to describe how prepared you were for the meeting? And I get two responses. Well, I have OCD, so I can say that. I'm like, well, if you have OCD, then you know that how much that's not true. And why are you perpetuating this myth to your colleagues? To which I usually get, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Or I didn't realize, you're right. I shouldn't be doing that. But I always try to educate. And I always do it back channel. I never do it in the meeting. But no, OCD is a serious mental health disorder that does a lot of damage to people's lives and, causes a fair amount of disability when it goes untreated, and it never gets better until it's treated. And it's just not an adjective. That's like saying everybody should have a little legal blindness. Duh.
Well, if it was really sunny out, wouldn't that be great if we were a little bit legally blind?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you could have photosensitivity.
I mean,
that's a great idea, Patrick.
But you're right. I mean, it sounds, when I say that, how ridiculous that absolutely sounds. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, it's really sunny. I wish I was a bit legally blind right now.
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. oh, this this gait is very narrow. I wish I was slightly anorexic or something. I mean, just
Yeah.
come on. You know,
No.
we don't use other conditions as something that we would suggest people having as a way to be better in life. So why do we think OCD helps when it doesn't? It just is not. So I I say that for everybody on here and part of the community and everything like that. Know that we fight against this all the time. Even at Christmas, it's not obsessive Christmas disorder, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not what it is.
I have one here from Danny. It says, "Why do therapists tell you to lean into thoughts? Question mark. Others say dismiss them."
Ooh, go for it. I got some things to say, but you start. Go, please.
Uh, um, well, yeah, I know Patrick has something to say, and what he has to say is very good. So, but when you're leaning into a thought, that might be done in the context of, exposure, learning that you can tolerate it, becoming more willing to tolerate it, more willing to let it be there and not let it have power over you or pull you in a direction or force you to do a compulsion to address it. So you're leaning into it specifically with a purpose. And then when I say, I don't know if I ever used the word dismiss, I think that might be a bad word to use, but not letting them have power over you. And I happen to like act, so I use metaphors, and one of them is, passengers on the bus and your OCD is on the bus. And sometimes, it's louder, more upfront, and you might lean into working on that. But at other times, it's in the back of the bus and it's just yapping, and you're like, yeah, that's an OCD thought. Thank you. I'm moving on. So it's not dismissing, it's working on it therapeutically versus not giving it power when you're engaged in other activities that are meaningful to you. Go, Patrick.
Love it. Dismiss can be used in a few ways. Number one, if it's a therapist who doesn't understand OCD and tells you just to dismiss the thought,
oh yeah,
that's basically telling you that there is an ability to actually dismiss things and then it'll never come back, right? So, Stacey, I want you to dismiss the thought of Volkswagens. All right, just dismiss it from now on. They don't exist anymore to you. Dismiss the thought of all Volkswagens. Did that work? Will you? Never?
No, one of my favorite comedians collects them, so I immediately saw his garage with all his Volkswagens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, boy, I'm reminded of the Bob Newhart "Stop It" skit.
Stop it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just yeah. Oh well, just stop it. Dismiss the thought. Stop it. Just stop thinking of it. Boy, you and I wouldn't have jobs if that was the case. We would have one session cures, and it would be just stop it. Just dismiss the thought. Yeah.
I know that you've been struggling with substances for 10 years. Just stop it. Stop drinking.
Just stop it. Yeah, and then you'll be fine. Yeah.
I love when people say, "Don't you know how much damage that's doing to your life?" I'm like, no, I missed the movie.
No, I had no idea, actually.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the more humorous things now, because when you're in recovery, you can laugh at things that other people just don't laugh at. But now it's kind of funny. I was admitted to the hospital in the medical unit. I had fallen down, gone boom, while intoxicated. And this nice social worker came in and sat on the end of my bed and said, "Miss Conroy, you had this fall, and do you think you have a problem with alcohol?" And I looked her right in the eye and said, "No, I know I have a problem with alcohol. I drink way too much, but I'm okay with it, and I don't want to go to detox. So could you get out of my room?" I'm like, I'm not confused.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have a problem. I know.
No, I have a problem. Yeah. I've known for a long time that alcohol is not for sipping or for those little umbrellas. Not in my life. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between knowing and when people just want to dismiss something or just say, stop it. It doesn't work that way.
No. Again, we would not have jobs anymore if that was the case.
No.
So, I mean, we would both love to not have jobs.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I'd go find another job, but
let's see. Let's take a look. I have harm OCD and hit and run OCD. Can you please give an example of how to accept uncertainty with this? Sometimes I truly fear I will act upon my thoughts. Please advise. Well, I tell the story of when I was a kid, my buddies and I watched a B horror film, like there's the A and then there's the horrible B films, like, and it was called The Toxic Avenger. And it was about a kid who was picked on by his classmates. And one of them threw him into a vat of toxic waste. And he emerged the next morning deformed, but massive, just huge. And he found this car in a junkyard, and it was the Toxic Avenger mobile. And one night he's driving around, and he's out to take care of all the bullies of the world, right? And to eliminate the world of them. And he sees these kids who did this to him, and they're riding their bikes on the street. And he says to himself, oh, 50 points a kid. And he guns it, and he just runs them all over. Now, since that time, I cannot drive and see someone riding a bicycle without thinking to myself, oh, 50 points each right there. I mean, it's there. It's automatic. So J7861, you say, sometimes you truly fear you will act upon my thoughts. Please advise. Jay, I'm just curious. How many times in the mall have you just randomly smacked people in the head? How many times while shopping have you just stolen everything? Isn't it interesting, Stacey, that the things that we're not worried about, we don't seem to go and just do, like all those other stuff. But the one that we are worried about, we'll spend infinite hours worrying about what if now I just act upon it at some point in time. Right?
Yep.
So if you've watched this webinar or the other webinars that I do on Wednesday night, you will know that for 4 years I have said there's a potential tonight. I will take one of the bottles of alcohol in my house, stuff a rag in it, light it on fire, and throw it at my neighbor Dave's house, and then go in the middle of the street, take a crap in a bag, light it on fire, put it in front of my neighbor Josh's house, ring the doorbell, watch him come out, see the flame, stomp on it, and get poopy flame on his shoe, laugh at him for it, shoot 3 geese flying over my house, and then return to the webinar. J7861, why haven't I done it yet?
Because your thoughts are thoughts.
Oh, okay. But aren't they harbingers of things to come? Won't they make me do it?
Make you?
There you go. Could I do it? Sure. I could do every one of those things. 100%. I could absolutely do every one of those things. Right?
Yeah.
Could.
Now, the fun part about this is if you have SUD, you have this little thing inside your head that says, don't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, if you have OCD, it does nothing but tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when other people tell you what you should do, your first line is to be defensive. No, I'm not going to do that therapy. No, I'm not going to take that med. No, I'm not going to do this. People in substance use disorder, early recovery, you could be an usher at a event, tear their ticket in half, hand it back to them and say, have a good time. And they're like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of the coin, I spent hours listening to OCD tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Talk about 2 things that just don't match up. But I bring that up because you could do them. And when you have SUD, guess what? When you're obsessing about your use, you do go and do it. So you get that mixed message between the 2 disorders. Mm-hmm. Because I never acted out on the harm OCD. I never hit anybody on the bus. I, never got arrested for assaulting somebody. But when you're obsessing about SUD, I did go and use, So you can get some mixed message between these two disorders. But with the OCD, I never followed through on any of that. Whereas the SUD, I followed through on a great deal of that. So the word could played out in my life in different ways. With the OCD, is that I could do it, but I never did. With the SUD, I could do it, and in fact, I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why they're a little bit more complicated if you have both in your life to treat. Because you'll use the events that happen in your SUD to challenge your therapist around OCD.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why we need to develop a concurrent treatment protocol. It's on my list of things to do. It's been there for a while, but it's on the list.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. How can I help my 12-year-old if he, quote, cannot stop his compulsion of scrubbing behind his legs in the toilet seat area? He doesn't care about rewards and knows that these feed the OCD. Well, first of all, RN, I don't know if you have your child in therapy or not. So if you say he doesn't, so if he is not meeting with someone, that would be numero uno to start doing, is to establish a therapeutic relationship with someone who knows how to treat OCD with exposure and response prevention therapy. If that relationship is going, then you have choices to make about, and you're not seeing the results you like, do you add medications to that or not? Of course, with younger kids, that's a different kind of discussion than it is with older, due to some black box warnings, I think. There are also, should you require it, intensive outpatient, partial hospital, or even residential treatment programs that could also play a role in the treatment of this as well too, depending on how much resistance there is to doing any kind of response prevention whatsoever. And I think you would just want to make sure that you have somebody there to help coordinate that whole experience for you and your family and your child, to make sure that we can get a program up and running. But I will tell you this, I don't know that you're going to convince him, even there, and he says that he knows it feeds the OCD. If you're not going to be working on some kind of response prevention or working with somebody who could help you with that.
Yeah, I had insight into the OCD, into the SUD. Insight doesn't lead to recovery. Treatment leads to recovery, and family needs support. Because they're also, depending on the age of the child, there's different emotional awareness and intelligence and experience. So you want to work with somebody who understands that and can be supportive of you and the family, so you're not accommodating, but you're not also adding to it. And there's different programs and techniques specifically for families that can be beneficial, even when there's some resistance to the child changing.
Yeah. I'm just jumping back around here a little bit to see where we're at.
Patrick, because I honestly don't know the answer to this, because I don't work with anybody but adults. Does NOCD work with adolescents or children?
No, CD goes down to age 5. Yeah. So we will treat 5 and up. Mm-hmm.
good for me to know. But as I said, I stick with adults.
Here's a fun one. Ruby says, I just finished having a conversation with someone who's struggling with the same type of relationship stuff I did with the relationship OCD. And you could tell them that they can get through it because you did, and you're so happy. Wonderful. Well, we'd love to hear a good story like that. That's awesome.
Well, I stole this from Ethan Smith, but I truly believe it. Your mess can...
And he's still looking for it, by the way. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I know. I'm hiding it very well.
Yes.
Yeah. So your mess can become your message. So all the things that I went through in my life with OCD and PTSD and SUD have now become my message that recovery is possible. I never said it's easy. I didn't say treatment was fun, but it is possible. And I wouldn't trade recovery. Even when I get blindsided every once in a while, like I shared earlier in this webinar, I wouldn't give it back for anything. So your mess really can become your message.
Yeah. RN asked, is every therapist at NoCD trained by me? Well, I did develop the training program and my team implements that program, but it would be hard to train every single one of them individually, but we definitely, my hands are in the experience. I will say that. So.
Yeah. And I will say, as somebody who's been around the OCD treatment world for quite some time, I've watched an OCD go from conception to what it is now. And no, not everybody could be trained by Patrick because they are too broad in not only the States, but they also do work abroad. Mm-hmm. And so that really has expanded access to treatment for OCD. And it's been fun to watch because years ago, I didn't have places to send people if they contacted me from a state that I'm not licensed in.
Right.
And now I do. Flat out. I have a place for you to go. And that's a big change.
Thank you. Last question. Can you define what compulsions are exactly? You have pure OCD, and identifying mental compulsions is a bit tricky. So I think in some ways you identified something right there, is that, yes, mental compulsions can be tricky, right? So I would say this. Any behavior or mental act that you do to attempt to neutralize whatever intrusive thought, image, or urge you're experiencing would be a compulsion. So if I have an intrusive thought about harm coming to my parents, I might knock 3 times on my desk because it's made out of wood. I might say a prayer, right? Both could be compulsions, because if both are done as a way to attempt to assure that nothing bad will happen to the people I love, then that could be defined as a compulsion. Now, I might get instantaneous relief from doing that, but then it might only last for a few milliseconds, and then the tension builds up again. What if it wasn't good enough? What if I didn't do it right? Maybe I should do it one more time. Knock on wood, or another prayer, right? Just in case my higher power missed that one, I'll send another one to them, right? Now, barring the fact that my higher power that I believe in is almighty, all-powerful, and all-knowing, but they could have missed my prayer, even though that violates the all-knowing, all-powerful thing, whatever. But what if, right? Oh, back to the what ifs, Stacey. There we go.
What if? What if?
Yeah. What if?
And what if your higher power has ADHD?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Could have just forgot about that. Yeah. So mental acts are behaviors too, and that's how we look at it in the ERP realm.
Yes.
Stacey, it's been another fun hour spent with you, and thank you for your time. And I hope that you feel better by the time we meet up again next month.
As do I, because being sick, not a fan.
Not a fun fan. Yes.
No.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our monthly OCD SUD themed webinar. We appreciate the time that all of you take with us, and we look forward to talking to you again. We will see you in a month. We bid you well, and as Julia Childs would say, bon appetit.